with our first question from Julian. Julian says, "Hey Dan, I wanted to get your take on the workout that shall not be named style events, and then there's a run followed by a bunch of pull-ups, a bunch of pull-ups, a bunch of squats, another run. I'm training for this and for the Secret Service Snatch test simultaneously because, you know, that's what you do. The Secret Service Snatch test is something I think is pretty good. I've done it. Back when I first started with kettlebells, Pavel made a good point, and I still think there's truth to it. Now, you might not like what I'm about to say, but he believes, and he reinforces it in his book, Return of the Kettlebell, which has some really excellent parts to it. And I do like the book. I don't know why anybody would ever want more programming. My only knock on the book would be the ballistic blocks, and that's only because he goes 2, 4, 6, 8 on the clean and kind of jerk ballistics. And for most of my time, ascending reps is just really hard. My response to that would be to do something like 2, 3, 5, 2, 3, 5, 2, 3, 5, 2, 3, 5, 8, 2, 3, 5, 8, 2, 3, 5, 8, something like that, where there is a little bit of oscillation in those ballistic reps. Most adults I work with like descending reps for a hard program. That's my experience, but you know, everybody's different. Pavel and I had a conversation years ago that I might be the only person who ever actually did the program as written, and that's why I feel like I have good feedback. The Secret Service Snatch test, you take, I'm just going to say the men's standards, and I apologize for not having every standard. I don't have the Masters 85 plus standards. Sometimes people ask me, why don't I have more standards? I just don't have them. But you take the 24 kilo kettlebell and you snatch it 200 times in 10 minutes. Now, Pavel's standard for the Return of the Kettlebell was that you were to do that, snatch the 24 200 times in 10 minutes, and press with one arm a kettlebell that's half your body weight. Anthony Barbiero and I years ago did this when this book came out, and I'll be honest with you, all we had was the 48 kilo bell, and that would have been pretty close to half my body weight at the time. I pressed it, you know, that was easy. And then I got to tell you, when you get to the 5-minute mark of a 10-minute, the 10-minute Secret Service Snatch test, you know, it's illuminating. Fortunately, I was able to get a fair number of reps in the first 5 minutes. When we do the certs, the RKC certs, we expect people to do in 5 minutes, get 100 reps. Most of the people I train, or like myself, we can get that closer to 4 minutes, and my females under 4 minutes. My female athletes under 4 minutes. So that when you roll into that 5-minute mark on the Secret Service test, you're looking at you're in that 120, 125 range, and then you have 5 minutes or whatever, get to the 200. And that's still tough, but it means you can rest. It means you can put the bell down, and you know, in our case, in both Anthony and I, as I recall, it was our lungs that were killing us, and then they're right around the 150 mark. The lockout starts getting a little bit scary. Put the bell down, relax, do the math, figure out how much time you do, and finish it. So this person wants to do the workout, a hard workout that shall not be named, and the Secret Service Snatch test. I'll say this, I don't say it enough, and that's a mistake I've been making for a while on the podcast. I think the kettlebell snatch it's weird because it's almost like in a U. It's either the most overrated exercise in history, or it's the most underrated exercise, underappreciated exercise. There's not a lot of moderation on it. And I think the kettlebell snatch, for that weird kind of heart rate that you get from it, Your heart rate goes through the roof. You kind of wonder why, because, you're not like sprinting up a hill, or you're not chasing somebody down a 400 meter, but you sweat hard, you get really tired. It really is what Leonard Schwartz talked about in Heavy Hands. It's what Steve Reeve talked about in Power Walking. It is that whole body cardiovascular movement under load, so you're getting all the qualities at once. So yeah, I would say that I have, so for Julian, let me just answer this in my own way, because that's what's going to happen. I like the Secret Service Snatch test. I think once you've done the 24 kilo, 200 reps in 10 minutes, you might never have to do it again. But if you go to a cert and someone says you have to do 100 in 5 minutes, you kind of go, yeah, okay, I got that. And I do like the idea of pressing the half body weight bell in the same half an hour, because I just think that's a good combination. It would prove that you have a fairly strong grasp of your cardiovascular abilities at the time, and you're still fairly strong. For this other stuff, the workout that shall not be named, and I'll tell you the reason. Everyone thinks I'm joking when I say that, but if I use that label, we'll get all kinds of people hate, love it. Okay, it's CrossFit, and the problem is, a friend of mine was just telling me the other day his wife got into this. She started going to the gym, and now she's broken. She did the workout. She learned all the things. He was saying, yeah, within about 2 weeks, she was an expert, just like me. I've been lifting weights since 1965, and she was just as qualified as I was after 2 weeks. She was, her coach was an expert in all fields, and then she got broken, and now she has to get fixed. And I got to tell you, every decade after 20, fixing physical injuries gets harder and harder and harder. I taught the original CrossFitters how to do the Olympic lifts. I liked the programming that CrossFit did when Lauren was doing it. I thought she had a real sound grasp of things. She basically hovered around certain workouts and certain templates that I thought were pretty valuable. She had a nice, like I can remember back early in the day, you would practice, there were certain days you would practice the snatch. Okay, here is the Olympic snatch, practice it. And that was the workout. There were other days it was like, I remember one workout was 3 sets of 5 in the back squat, post your load. And it was like, that was it. I thought that was a pretty good idea. The push-ups were relatively at a good level. The pull-ups at a good level. But then once it became a little bit bigger, once it became a lot more aggressive, and of course, some of the articles they would post politically, I struggle with some of the politics. And it wasn't because it was it was just, I just didn't think it was an appropriate place to put it. When it started sliding down certain things, I grew up in a home with disabled American veterans. And so when people when people talk about the military in certain ways, I find it difficult for my heart. Are there values to CrossFit? When I first, sat down with Greg, we had lunch together, Greg Glassman, and I said to him, I would be willing to experiment with CrossFit in a high school setting, and we did. And very quickly, I had to walk away from it because the injuries were so high. The upside is I learned that, like box jumps. Okay, everyone loves box jumps, but when you're working with a general population, which I did in my strength and conditioning classes, we had athletes. We had a varsity football program. We had female athletes class. We all kind. But then we had the general. I'm not throwing box jumps under the bus or anything. But if you're going to teach box jumps, there is a high level of coaching, of teaching. You've got to build up to it. There's got to be a lot of explanation, and the athlete has to be able to moderate when they're going to go, when they're going to raise the dial up. And if they start having sloppy reps, there can be no sloppy reps with some exercises. The Olympic lifts, you can't have sloppy reps. Heavy back squats, you can't have sloppy reps. Any sport, you can't have sloppy reps. The emphasis on burpees showed up right after that. And, Royal Burpee, the inventor of the burpee, told us we should do 4, and 4 is a good number for burpees. Doing a 10,000 burpee challenge might be interesting, but you might pay a high price on the injury side for that. When CrossFit was joking about this thing called rhabdomyolysis, I had a friend who got it, and it's not a joking matter. It's a very dangerous thing, and it's not something you laugh at. Having people puke and training a lot can really lead to a lot of issues, as I've discovered later. Hey man, I've trained to the point that I've gotten nauseous. I may have puked. I don't think I've ever puked in a gym setting, but I've gotten nauseous. And when I was young, that's kind of how you train, because we were just a bunch of, young bulls, I guess, and just, if you can do this, I can do more. But there are people that puking is going to have some issues with them, and it's going to lead to some kinds of issues with body and some kinds of physical issues, and of course the throat issues. So no, I'm not a fan of this. Julian, I can't recommend you go after either of these goals necessarily, but I got to tell you this: if I was to pick one of your goals, the Secret Service Snatch test taught me a lot about myself. Anytime you're fighting against the clock for 10 minutes, it's interesting. I did 2 of those competitions called Gear Voice Sport. I used the 32 kilo bells, and that, by the way, with the Secret Service test, you're allowed as many hand switches with what you want. In GS, at least when I did it, you snatch with one hand, and then you had one hand switch, and that was it. And I got to tell you, that was eye-opening. I didn't use the GS techniques because I didn't need to learn another sport. And it's a sport. GS is a sport. So when they do things in Gear Voice Sport, they're competing to do well in the sport itself. In the same way that, if I'm doing a workshop about the discus throw, I don't necessarily think, I'm teaching the discus throw, and it's not going to, even though it might help you with your balance, your speed, your strength, there's much easier ways for the bulk of the population to get those qualities. So I'm not necessarily a fan of your question. I do my best to answer them, as I say every week, and I hope there was some clarity there. There's going to be a problem. There's going to be backlash from me even talking about the workout that shall not be named, because people are buy into it at an extremely emotional level. Very much like some fans. Just as I was coming in here, I was listening to the radio about some fans racially taunting an athlete, and that really bothers me. Just because you pay a ticket doesn't mean you have the right to say anything you want. Very few places in life allow that. So I worry that when I talk about certain things, I get some pushback from people, and it's very negative. So I hope I helped. It's not the best. I know it's not the best answer I've ever had, and I apologize for that. I didn't necessarily want to answer that question, but I thought I should, and I do appreciate you asking it. And I hope at some level that helped somebody. Okay? Thank you, Joey.